Well, welcome everyone to the Cost of Courage podcast. Today we are so honored to have Gold Star Sibling Kristine Flores with us. Kristine lost her brother, Army Specialist Michael Mialakis, in Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003. As a TV news producer with more than 2 decades in the newsroom, Kristine brings both professional insight and a deeply personal perspective to conversations about sacrifice, grief, and the importance of elevating the voices of Gold Star families. So we are, again, very honored to have you here, Kristine. And please share a little bit about yourself if I missed anything at all.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here to talk about my brother and Gold Star families today. I've spent the last 20 years as a journalist, elevating the voices of community members that include Gold Star families. And I'm from the Bay Area, native, and I'm happy to be here today.
Well, thank you so much. I think to start, I would really love for you to share a little bit about your brother, Michael, and just, anything about your relationship with him that was special to you. And again, anything you'd like to share.
So my brother, Mikey, as we called him, was 5 years younger than me. So he was the baby of the family. And he was such a special kid and so much fun. And we always got into mischief together. When I would babysit my brother and sister, my parents would, go out to dinner and I would babysit. He was always down to get into some sort of mischief. So whether that was, doing music videos with my mom's camcorder or taking the entire roll of tinfoil and wrapping him up to make him into the Tin Man, he was he was always down to have fun. And he had just such a light in him. And as he got older, that light got bigger and brighter. So when he was all grown up, that was what he was known for, is just having such a bright light and making everybody feel like they were the most important person in the room. So that's what I remember about him the most.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that about your brother. And, obviously we're here today as you are a Gold Star sibling. And I thank you so much, for your willingness to do this interview. I know that, it's a tough subject to discuss, and, we want to be mindful of all of your boundaries and also, just the sensitivity of this subject, not only for you, but for siblings who may be listening, and then also our audience who may not be familiar with what a Gold Star family is. So I also just kind of wanted to start there. We were talking about this earlier, that's, not everyone knows what a Gold Star family is. So in your mind, how would you define that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that not everybody, like you said, not everybody knows what a Gold Star family is. And a Gold Star family is a family that has lost a loved one in combat, in war, serving. And that is a very small percentage of the population. And so when we have things like Memorial Day or things where we're honoring that, a lot of times you'll see, thank you all veterans and stuff like that during Memorial Day. But really, that's a day dedicated to those that have fallen. And so that is a very important distinction, especially for Gold Star families, to honor them in that way.
Thank you for that. And, that gets into my question that I wanted to discuss with you. How being a Gold Star sibling shaped the direction of your life. Your personal ambitions, did they change any way, when you experienced that loss of your brother? How did being a Gold Star sibling shape your life?
Well, I think that when you lose someone in this way, under these set of circumstances, you're always looking through that lens for everything in your life for the rest of your life. And so for me, I was just starting my career as a journalist when I lost my brother. And it gave me a sense of direction in that sense. I knew that I wanted to use what I was doing in my career to elevate those voices and to make sure that people knew about Gold Star families and talk to the parents and talk to the siblings and just share their stories to make sure that their memories were never forgotten. And they say that Gold Star families suffer two deaths, once when their loved one dies and then another one when their name is never said again. So making sure that those names are said, making sure that those stories are continuing to be told, it gave me a sense of purpose in that sense.
That's incredible. And you were telling me about some of the incredible work that you were able to do, in preserving these stories along the lines of making sure that not only your brother, but other fallen service members were not forgotten. And if you wanted to touch on a little bit of that, the Library of Congress project that was so amazing.
Yeah, it was a really wonderful and important project that I was part of. One of my friends, Keith Sherman, is a retired Navy, and he had this idea. He wanted to drive across the country and meet with a Gold Star family in every state. And then at the end of the journey, take all the oral histories that he collected and submit them to the Library of Congress. They have a program where veterans and Gold Star families can record their interviews and submit them to the Library of Congress, so anyone can listen to them and just get a sense of war and what it's like to be deployed and the cost to the family and all those sorts of things. And you can listen to them from anywhere in the world. And it took him over a year, but he was able to go to every state, and we lined up families and we talked to them and he interviewed them, and we just got a sense of the fabric of America. We got a sense of from every single state. He went to Hawaii, he went to Alaska, and just hearing those stories and being able to not only capture those stories, but to have local media be involved and interview the families, interview Keith Sherman as well, and have the communities in those states that they came from know about the project and know about their family. It was very important to us.
That's incredible. And was that therapeutic for you as well as those families?
It was, and it was very therapeutic for my friend. He had just retired and he was looking for something more. He had lost a lot of friends during his time in the military. He had been deployed several times, and he was looking for a way to honor the families, but it was also very therapeutic for him. He was in a very, difficult point at that time because he had just retired and he was struggling, and it gave him a way to honor the families. And it also helped me as well, being able to talk to all these families, and I just felt like I was honoring my brother by honoring their loved ones.
Absolutely. And I wonder if they were going through some of the same things that you were going through and seeing those commonalities between them and you, that I think that's a very, hopefully it was, a special experience that was very unique opportunity for you to have. I'm sure that, you were able to have an impact on them as much as they had on you. Yeah,
we still keep in touch with a lot of the families that we did this project a couple years ago, and we still keep in contact with a lot of those families and just, make sure that, they're moving on okay, and they let us know when stuff's going on in their, life in their community. And it's very fulfilling to be able to be part of that. And it was just a wonderful experience.
That's amazing. I'm so glad you still keep up with them because, as we know, as people go through their grief journey, it's obviously, at different phases of grief, they're probably experiencing different things and their life circumstances have changed as well. So it's nice that, you keep up with them to just say, hey, I'm here, you're not alone. And I'm sure that means a lot to them.
Yeah. I mean, going through that process, it really solidified to me that grief looks different for everybody. And you always hear about, the 7 steps and first is this and then is that. But the reality is grief is not linear and it comes and goes. It's like waves, and it can tackle you at any moment and you're not prepared. And so listening to all these families, their interviews, made me feel like I wasn't alone in that.
one of the things that I really appreciate about you is that you've really embraced being a Gold Star sibling. You understand not only your own grief and experience, but you've had a lot of peers in the community who have experienced their own unique journey. And as you know, we have a scholarship as the Cost of Courage Foundation. We have a scholarship that we offer every year for Gold Star spouses, children, and siblings. And through these essay submissions over the years, through our own direct interactions, there's been these kind of common themes that have come up and the struggles specifically with the siblings. And, I'm just going to highlight some of those things and, bring this up as delicately as we possibly can. And this is, again, why I so appreciate you being here and being willing to even dive into this, because it's so important that Gold Star siblings, as well as all Gold Star family members, feel seen and heard. So, a lot of the siblings touch on the fact that, they're processing their grief, but they feel invisible. They feel invisible to society. A lot of them have had to step into the role of a caregiver at a very young age, as their parents navigate their own grief, and, the family dynamic is impacted, no doubt. And then it's also, them having difficulty relating to their peers. So those are this is not an exhaustive list of, what these experiences have been, but that's at least what's been communicated to us through, again, these essay submissions and just these interactions over the years. But the general consensus has been that there's not always adequate support for their unique circumstances. So with all of that, I know it's a lot, but based on your own experiences, would you be able to provide insight on these dynamics or offer any perspective on how to navigate these complex challenges? Again, if any Gold Star siblings are listening, especially right now.
When you do lose someone in this way, the dynamic of your family shifts. No matter what the state of the family was ahead, before it happened, it shifts. And everybody's journey into this horrible thing that has happened is different. And not everybody is on the same page. And that can be really challenging for siblings, particularly. A lot of focus is always spent on the parents, which rightly so, it makes sense. But there is always, if there's siblings, they're all often we call, the silent grievers, because there is no resources directed towards siblings. There is no foundation specifically for resources for us. We are I know for me, I felt like I was kind of just floundering out kind of on the periphery of the situation and trying to be strong for my family members and be a rock for them, knowing that there was no one there being a rock for me. That's a typical dynamic that is usually, presented. And it's really hard to navigate. It really is, because we don't want to, I know I didn't really want to speak up. I didn't want to say, hey, what about me? Because, my parents are in the throes of this huge tragedy. And so you feel bad. You don't want to speak up. You don't want to rock the boat, because everybody's having such a hard time, and you're just trying to survive. You're just trying to survive. And that state of constant survival can last years. And for me, it lasted years. And you're just trying to keep everything together. And it's really, really hard. And there's just no spotlight on siblings, hardly ever, that I've seen, that I've experienced. And I don't want to speak for everybody, of course, but I know for me and my close friends that are in the same situation, that's kind of how it is.
And yes, I mean, you've become somewhat of a mentor, you kind of filled that vacuum, if you will, with your own experiences. You know, have you been able to, you know, impact other siblings in a positive way, you know, sharing your experiences or just by simply being there for them?
I like to think so. I have a core group of siblings that I met at a parent event that they happened to be there, which I'm so grateful they were because we pushed for sibling activities at this event and we were able to get that. So even though our group is small, it's important that we have that connection, and it's just so important because we don't have to explain anything. Like, we have that shared experience where we know exactly what each other had to go through and continues to go through. And so just knowing that they know and just being around them and being able to be with them and, you know, share parts of our journey together has been a huge comfort.
Absolutely, because I mean, just like you, where you're thinking, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to, you know, put myself in the spotlight. They probably felt the same exact way.
Right.
And for you guys to kind of have this ad hoc, if you will,
Yeah.
you know, group. I wonder how often this is happening across the country, just in an unofficial capacity. And it's unfortunate, as you said, you know, there's not a lot of resources out there for the siblings. So you guys have kind of taken up the mantle and done that on your own. So so I commend you for that.
Thank you.
And you know, hope you continue to do that, but also, you know, making sure that you're mindful of your own grief and, you know, taking care of yourself in every way that you possibly can.
There's only one way, and it's through. There's no other. You can't avoid it.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's what I'm wondering is, I mean, you've obviously come out so well. You're an incredible person.
Oh, thank you.
You are. And I just wonder, you know, how you were able to overcome those challenges on your toughest days when you thought, I can't do this anymore. How did you keep going, and did that end up shaping who you are and in more ways than you know, maybe even realized at the time?
That's a really good question, and I think at the time you don't realize how you're doing it. You're just trying to survive and trying to make some sort of sense of the tragedy and why and how come and all those things. And, you know, it took a really long time to like find some sort of center, some sort of peace. It's not easy, and people have they go at different speeds, and they find a different ways of coming to the center. And for me, it was really hard, and it took a really long time to be able to do that. And I just tried to throw myself into, you know, my community as far as is trying to elevate those voices and covering stories as a journalist that matter to the Gold Star community. And that was kind of my way of coping in a lot of ways. But it's not easy, and you don't think that you're doing it the right way until you're further along down the road where you can look back and be like, wow, I was able to kind of get through that really difficult time.
Absolutely. And I mean, what is interesting of what I'm hearing, you know, that you had an outlet. That was good. I think you created your own outlet, really. Yeah. Which is a healthy way, I think, of anyone grieving. And not only were you able to do that for yourself, but I think exactly what you did with that, you know, the project that you worked on, it was able to help other families, like you were saying. So, I mean, what better way?
Right. Yeah. And when you put it that way, an outlet, I think no matter what your outlet happens to be, I think everybody needs something to channel their grief and their hurt and their anger into something else. Because if you don't, it just kind of festers inside your heart and your soul, and that can be pretty devastating, I'd say.
Absolutely. And like, luckily with you, it happened organically, but
Yeah.
through others, sometimes it happens through, through therapy and other
Right.
avenues, but whatever it takes to find that, that outlet, I
Right.
would encourage people to do so.
Absolutely.
I can't say enough, have done so incredibly well for yourself, and you're an inspiration.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And I just wonder, this gets to a question that I had about, just self-care in general. What is it that you did at the beginning that, or is that still a journey that you're on, trying to, figure out how to just get through the days? Because grief does not go away, it just changes form.
Right.
So dealing with, kind of new manifestations of grief, is there some type of self-care regimen that you have that could maybe benefit someone that, may be looking for something like that?
So in the beginning, I used to write letters to my brother, like in a journal.
Oh, wow.
I used to write to him, and that helped me a lot as well. Just to get all my thoughts out and, be able to put it somewhere. I think journaling is very underrated. I think a lot of people, think, oh, that's not going to really help me. That's stupid. But it actually gave me kind of a lot of release when I would write. And then you can always go back and read it and see how far you've come. So that is helpful, I think. And, therapy is also very important if you have access to it. I know that can be challenging, but just having someone else that's not reliant on maybe your happiness or your stability, listening and being there and being somebody you can bounce stuff off of is very important as well. But every day, it changes. Went through a running phase for a while.
Well, that's
So it changes as the years go on. But finding ways to protect your own peace and your own sanity, whatever that looks like, is important.
I love what you said about protect your own peace, and you really touched on, getting back to the previous question about just how siblings have to process things so differently, and this, again, not feeling seen, and I think having to be even more resilient, than, maybe beyond their years. In terms of your own family dynamic, your own challenges, and you can get into as much or as little as you want, but in terms of what you had to do at the beginning versus, where you are now, do you feel like, it's kind of come full circle and things have changed
right
over the years?
Yeah, I think that, like I mentioned before, the dynamics shift, and they're like that forever. The shift is like that forever. And my specific grief journey versus my parents, for instance, we were all different. We were on different pages, which can happen. And it makes it harder to move through your journey when everybody is on different pages. And so you hope that at some point you'll meet and you'll be on the same page in the future. But that doesn't always happen. And even whether it's 1 year, 5 years, 20 years after the loss, you're changed. You're forever changed. You're different, and your family is different. And you hope that at some point you can all be in the same place, but that doesn't happen, and that has not happened for my family. And there is still a lot of resentment and anger and lack of processing that has happened in my family. So it makes it hard to move through that space when there's challenges like that. And I've learned that you can't bring people to where they need to be. You have to meet them where they are, unfortunately. And so in that process, you do have to protect yourself and your peace going through that, because then you start to resent other people because they are not what you need them to be for you. So navigating that can be very challenging and can harbor a lot of resentment. And so, I wish that we had all been on the same page and we all moved through that space together and were able to be there for each other as a collective unit to be stronger, but that's not what happened. So you just try to do the best you can and try to, like I said, protect your own peace and just try to do what you can to get through the space, because if you don't, it'll destroy you. The loss and the grief and the sadness, the anger. I mean, all the things will destroy you.
And I think that's an amazing point. And I think that's something that so many could probably relate to. Because one thing that I really appreciated, in a conversation we had before this podcast, it doesn't necessarily, because you had a quote unquote strong family dynamic before a tragedy hits, or if you had a family that, maybe had its difficulties that predated the loss, it's not an indicator.
Right, it's not an indicator. And you would think that it would be, but you just never know how someone is going to react to such a profound loss. You just don't know. And it's not an indicator at all. You just don't know. And until you're there and it's right in front of you and you have to deal with it, there's no way to know for sure. And some families, it tears them up forever. And that's just a reality of the loss in this way,
Well, it's a position no one wants to be in, a club no one wants to be in. And yeah, I mean, in every family member, it's going to hit them differently. And I don't think it matters either, how close you were to that sibling or, the child, the spouse. It's just loss is going to just hit how it hits.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, and everybody's just kind of trying to get through it. And as you said, ideally, everybody's on the same page, or at least, maybe if not at first, they get to that point.
Right.
But for siblings listening right now, that's a hope. But just coming to terms with the fact that might not become a reality. And like you keep saying so eloquently, protect your peace, and you need to prioritize your self-care and your own journey forward.
Yeah, it's really important that you do your best to protect your own mental health, because I know that I spent a lot of time hoping and waiting for certain family members to come meet me where I am, and waiting and the years going by, hoping that, this person or whoever would be that source of support for me. And then it just doesn't come. Right. And you have to be able to deal with that in like the healthiest way possible. And if you're not in the right headspace to do that, it makes it really hard and continues to make it really hard. And you just have to kind of let go at that point, because it's not going to happen. It's not going to be, that person is not going to be what you need them to be for you. So find it in other places.
And maybe in other people, because you've been able to establish these relationships with like other Gold Star siblings, your other relationships that you have had, and, being a parent as you are, bringing this unique perspective and everything that you've learned, has that made you a better friend, a better mom?
I think so. Like I said before, you look through this lens now with everything, as a parent, as, an employee, as just a human, right? You can just really, I think that I can empathize, with a lot of people and a lot of situations better because of this. And I just think that it brings an understanding to a lot of situations that you may have overlooked before.
Yeah.
because you're not looking through that lens, but you are now. You look through that lens with everything, and it colors everything in your life. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, to be able to have that sort of empathy.
And I wonder, was journalism always the path, or did that find you?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of dabbling in it when I lost my brother, and it just kind of solidified it for me that that's what I wanted to do. And so moving forward in that just felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, because you have to have a lot of empathy. You know, you have to have that kind of approach. And, you know, it's good that, again, you've taken everything that I think it just molded you into this person that you are now, you know, and just shaped that path. And you can feel, you know, that you're able to really empathize and understand not only somebody who's a gold star, and this is the kind of the exact mirror situation, but it's understanding just grief in general and what people are going through, especially when, you know, they're in front of the camera, something's happened. You know, you know how to approach, and you're very careful on how you approach somebody who's might be going through something.
Yeah. I think that helped me a lot when I was working on that project. And anytime I, you know, try to do a story, having that commonality, you know, I let them know right off the bat, you know, that I am a Gold Star sibling. I know exactly what you're going through. And my goal here is to elevate your voice and have your story told. And I think that carries a lot of weight with the people that I feature in stories and talk to, things like that.
Absolutely. It probably made them more comfortable talking to you. Like somebody who gets it, who actually went through this, it's better than someone, you know, who just has no friends.
And sometimes, you know, when you have a microphone in your face and people are asking questions and they haven't quite connected with the subject matter as much as they should, you know, sometimes things come out, you know, insensitively. But my goal is to have them feel as comfortable and safe as possible.
Yeah, because I mean, and also you were still learning. You were still very, you know, new to that journey too.
Yeah.
And, you know, the fact that you took the time to try to understand, because it gets back to everybody's different, as we know.
Yeah.
So you don't know, you know, what kind of day, it's different day to day.
It really is. And it doesn't matter how much time has passed. You know, sometimes it feels like it was yesterday. Sometimes it feels like it was 20 years ago. Sometimes it feels like it was yesterday and 20 years ago at the exact same time. It's hard to explain, but every day is different. And some days you're stronger than others. And it's like that your whole life, the entire part of the after that you lost that person. So even though it has been 20 years for me, there are some days where it's still so incredibly painful. Some days I'm stronger. It just kind of depends.
Yeah, and I think that's a common misconception of like, oh, it was decades ago. It was, you know, no, it continues on, and it's never, there's no expiration on grief. I'm sorry. No. So, you know, and this is something that I was wondering too, was honoring your brother's legacy through even, you know, it doesn't have to be these grand gestures. I think people think it's got to be this grand gesture of how you honor, but I think you honor someone every day that you live as a good person and you live in their legacy just like you do. And, you know, I wonder if there's anything that you do in particular, you know, is there something you do on an annual basis, or is there something that you just do every day to honor Michael?
Well, I definitely think about him every single day. There's, you know, even all these years later, there's no day that goes by that I don't think about him. So honoring him in that way. My oldest son, I named after my brother, and he's, goodness. And so he's growing up. He's 13 and he's starting to look exactly like him.
No way.
So every time I look at him, you know, I think about him. And, you know, just doing things that remind me of him, going to restaurants. There was this restaurant, unfortunately closed down now, but there's this restaurant that's right by the cemetery where he's buried that we used to go to all the time for when we were a kid, all the way up to leaving, you know, for college. And we would go there and honor him, have his favorite meal. You know, at home, on special occasions, we'll have his favorite meal. and, think about him and toast him. And I think it's, like you said, it's not necessarily big grand gestures most of the time. It's just the little things.
And that's what's most important,
Yeah.
I think. And, I'm sure so proud of you. And I don't want to start crying yet, but I mean, it's just amazing what you've been able to do for him and for yourself. I think that's the main thing is, like I said, just living as a good person and doing what you do, just being you, it's such it really is the best way to honor your brother. And I mean,
Thank you.
We covered so much stuff, but I wonder if there's anything else that we might have missed. You go for it.
I think that I would say that for a family that is maybe going through something like this, I would say that it is so, so important that you acknowledge the grief that your other children are going through. Hold space for that. Acknowledge that. Because when it's not acknowledged, then there's no path forward for that sibling. And a simple acknowledgement goes so far. And, holding space for us and acknowledging that there is, grieving happening on our side as well, is so important.
That's wonderful. I think that encompasses everything that, and getting back to earlier, this what so many of the siblings have shared with us, I think, you've been able to speak to so eloquently and elevate those concerns, so that my hope is after they watch this episode, and really anyone watches this episode, is that, Gold Star siblings are a huge part of that family dynamic. And if you happen to know a Gold Star sibling, please show them some extra love.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what
exactly.
they've been going through.
They need the extra love. They've been dealing with unspoken pressures and unspoken, grief. And it's really important that, they're brought in to the fold and they're part of the fabric of the family. And it's really important that they're included. Ask them if they're okay,
So
check
simple.
on them, make sure that they have what they need. And sometimes as parents, and I'm a parent, so I can say this confidently, I know that if it were my child, that I know that I would have to put aside my grief for a moment, to make sure that, my other kids are doing okay. Because like I said, the unspoken pressures and grief and the survivor's guilt and all the things, all of them, there's so many that happens to siblings as well. And it can be crushing. And so just check on them, make sure they're okay, and give them the resources that they need so that they can, protect themselves as well.
I think that says it so well. And the survivor's guilt, is something that, we also hear about.
Right.
And that's in a lot of grief dynamics, but especially this one, especially if they were, because you may be the only living sibling. And what you talked about, the pressure.
Yeah.
Just understanding that, it's a heavy weight.
It is a heavy weight. If you're the only other sibling and, you happen to be a girl and your sibling was, a boy, and now you're the surviving sibling member, you have the pressure of knowing that, your name has died with your brother. And so that is an unspeakable and silent pressure that a sibling carries, that maybe some people don't even think about that, or it doesn't even cross their mind.
No.
But there's just little ways that manifest that people don't realize.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's just all of these little things, and they're not little things.
Right.
You know, it's one more thing on top of the plate. And this is, again, if you know a Gold Star sibling, please just show some love, because it's really, it's not something that, you know, a lot of people are talking about. And again, I'm so grateful, and I know how hard this was to do, and I will always be so honored that you did this.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So with that, I want to close in honor of your brother. So Specialist Michael Mialakis, we will never forget. And we will always honor all Gold Star families, all of the fallen. We will never forget their sacrifice. And we just want to send love to any Gold Star family member that needs it right now. And again, you will never be forgotten, and we will never forget. Thank you.
Thank you.